Hello everybody, we're going to go ahead and look through example 8. So we're finding the limit as x goes to infinity of the square root of 2x squared plus 1 over 3x minus 5. The difference with this one is it has that radical involved. Okay, but the process is still the same. We just have to take into account the radical. So the first thing is, as soon as I see something's going to infinity, I'm going to divide out by the highest degree in the denominator. Okay, so in this case, my highest degree is x. So I'm going to divide everybody by x. Now here is where you need to be careful. I want to divide everybody by x. However, I have to take into account that there's that square root. So what I would say to you is, underneath my radical, I can't just divide out by x. I would say, who is my equivalent? The square root of what is equal to x? The square root of x squared is equal to x. Okay, so instead of just dividing by x underneath my radical, I got to divide out by x squared. Okay. So now from here, I'm going to do a little simplifying. Down here, well, let's write this one out. We'd have x, and then we would have, because we factored it out, we would have 3 minus 5 over x. And now up top, I would have my square root, and I took out an x squared, and then I would have 2 plus 1 over x squared. Okay. In this case, if you guys just wanted to check, if you took the square root of the x squared, we would be back to x. So then they would be exactly the same. Okay. So I'm going to do that. I am going to take the square root of x squared. Okay. Biggest thing, you guys, when you take the square root of something, there are two answers. However, x squared is always positive. Okay. This is always a positive number. And so when I take the square root of it, it will have, we will say it's going to be positive, because in order to take the square root of it, we had to have a positive number. So the way we denote that is our limit as x approaches infinity is we say the absolute value of the square root of x squared is x. I'm saying this has to be positive because you can't take the square roots of negatives. Okay. Then we have the square root of 2 plus 1 over x squared all over x. And then I would have 3 minus 5 over x. Okay. These two typically cancel out, and they will. The biggest thing you guys need to be cautious of is your signs. If I'm going to positive infinity, well, we all know the absolute value of something is positive. And then if I plug in a positive infinity here, this will also be positive. So my sign on here will be positive. Okay, so you use that to take into account. And then these two would cancel, because the absolute value of x will be x, which is positive, and they'll cancel. And then I have my limit as x approaches infinity of the square root of 2 plus 1 over x squared all over 3 minus 5 over x. And now I would think about plugging in my infinity, and once again, air quotes, for x. 1 over infinity squared, this would approach 0, and then 5 over infinity would approach 0. So the limit for this one would be the square root of 2 over 3. And we would leave it as that exact answer. Okay, if you could take the square root of 2, then you would actually go ahead and tell me what that numeric answer is, but since it's not a rational number, it's an irrational number, we would leave it as square root of 2. Let's go ahead and look at B. Very similar, except for this time we're going to negative infinity. So let's just write out the steps just to get used to it. So we divide out by our highest degree in the denominator, or highest power, which would be x. And now to be the equivalent of dividing out by x, underneath my radical, I would divide out by x squared. Okay, or factor out. So I have my limit as x approaches negative infinity. I have the square root. I have x squared. Then I have 2 plus 1 over x squared all over x, 3 minus 5 over x. Now I'm going to take the square root of x squared. In order to be able to take the square root of it, this has to be positive, which it is. If you take a number and square it, it's positive. So that tells me this will have to be a positive answer. So the way we denote something as positive is using that absolute value. So I have the absolute value of x over x, and then this time I have the square root of 2 minus 1 over x squared. And then I have 3 minus 5 over x. Now, this right here, we all know the absolute value will give me a positive result, okay, even if I were to plug in a negative infinity. Now here, if I were to plug in a negative here, that would make this a negative number, okay? And we all know a positive divided by a negative will leave us with a negative result, Okay, so we have a negative on this one. And then I'm going to think about plugging in my negative infinity here. 1 over a negative infinity squared will approach 0. 5 over negative infinity will approach 0 as well. So this time, positive divided by negative, so I'd have a negative square root of 2 over 3. Okay, so you just got to be careful with that piece there. And so that is it for example 8.